Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday as Bill Sees It meeting. Today we have John C. from Ontario, Expanding God Consciousness. This is month 4, Strengthening Spiritual Connections. John will share for up to 60 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing. Or if you'd like to ask John a question. John, it is incredible to have you back with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sky. I appreciate the invitation and the introduction. So good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I am an alcoholic and a member of a group called Agape Group in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So I'm excited to share with you today about my spiritual journey and about the connection I have with my higher power. Now, I want to really clear the air here. I am no authority in spiritual matters, nor am I telling you this is the way to do it. I'm simply sharing my experience around these areas that is ever growing and ever changing. But I can assure you that I'm in action every day to develop this idea of a spiritual foundation for my life. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to participate right from the very beginning. Each of us come here today and we've had some preoccupation how we arrived here, and it may be some concerns, it may be something wonderful that's happened in our lives, it may be frustration, anxiety, upset, worry. What I'm asking you to do right now is to put that aside for the next hour and a little bit. You can pick it up at the end of the meeting. No one's going to take it on you, but I would like you to be fully present, because it's in the presence that we really find the joy and the juice of living. And oftentimes we walk around, with preoccupation, conclusions, and judgments, and all this other stuff that prevents us from being fully present. So not that I have something fantastic to offer you, but being fully present for yourself, you'd be amazed to what you would pick up from this intuitiveness that we talk to, this inherent generational wisdom that exists in each of us. And when we're fully present, we're more present to that intuition. So listen to the whispers. Listen to what's guiding you. Listen to what interests you, what may motivate you. These are all reasons for being here today. Whether it's me or somebody else or anybody, what we like to do is to connect. But what's going to be available to you is your own intuitiveness. So I just ask you to do that. So today we're talking about the spiritual connection and really developing that. And I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. I want you to imagine a life where your spiritual connection is so strong that worry, frustration, upset, restlessness, irritability, and discontent is just a memory. That you've aligned yourself with this power, this advocate, this cause in our life. That all the other things that you know that you're in God's care. And you can imagine how all these other human concerns we have gets moved to the sidelines. So I just want you to think about that for yourself today. That spiritual connection for you, wherever you are in your journey, can be made so strong that all those concerns that we have in our life can move to the sidelines. So I'm going to ask you to kind of get out of your head. We human beings have concluded that we're thinking beings. That's what makes us human. And although there's some partial truth in that, we're much more than our thinking being, because our thoughts cannot always be trusted. You see, our brain, the organ, operates with deletions, distortions, dissonance, conclusions, and judgments that often aren't accurate. But what is accurate is our bodies. Our bodies have no capacity to lie. So I'm going to ask you to move into your heart space with me as I journey along this conversation with you. And to get out of your head and listen with your heart. So I'm going to offer something that's radically different. And again, I want to remind you that it doesn't make me right. It doesn't make me an authority. This is just my experience. So we often fall thinking about what we know versus what we experience. So we trust the brain so much, we kind of self-identify. Well, I know that, I know this, I know that. And we may say things like, I believe in God, or I believe in a power greater than myself, or I believe in some sort of spiritual advocate that's out in the world. I believe that. And we say it from our heads, from our intellectual, cognitive point of view. And we may know that. But I'm going to ask you to check into your experience instead of relying on what you think you know. And see how you actually prioritize your relationship with this bonding with God. So let's just take a moment. Is it a few minutes every day? Is it 7 minutes? 60 minutes? Or throughout the day, do you commune and align yourself with God's will? Now, here is something that I want you to consider. And I know you haven't got the answer to this. I'm not expecting you to have an answer to it because we often don't measure our experience in terms of time. But in a 16-hour waking period, what percentage of my time do I spend in prayer and aligning my will with God? 16 hours I'm awake. So 16 hours times 60 is 960 minutes. And am I actively connected with God, say for 15 minutes a day? That's about 1.6% of the time duration here on earth. And does that describe to me what my priority is in this relationship? Now, some of you probably thinking, well, it's not duration that really matters, it's the quality. And that's true. But we're trying to get a picture away from our minds to really look and see how we prioritize our lives. Have we really come to believe that a power greater than ourselves will restore us to sanity? Have we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God? Are we moving in that direction? Do we have an advocate beside us, walking beside us moment by moment, that we can rely on, that we can have conversations with? How important is this relationship with you? And where can it grow from now into some sort of powerhouse connection? So today's talk is really about the expanding and strengthening this connection. Now, I also want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of prayer and meditation you may be doing. You know, think about prayer as a spiritual electricity, and your connection to a higher power is a circuit. When we first start praying, we might feel like we're operating on low voltage, maybe a dim 40-watt bulb of faith. Our prayers seem weak, flickering, barely illuminating our immediate surroundings. But as we strengthen our spiritual practice, it is like we're increasing the wattage. Our 40-watt prayer life becomes 100 watts, then 500 watts, then 1,000 watts. Suddenly, we're not just lighting up the room. We're illuminating our entire lives. Our prayers aren't just whispers anymore. They're powerful currents of energy, transforming us from the inside out. The amazing part, unlike our electricity bill, this spiritual power doesn't cost more or as it gets stronger. The more we pray, the more capacity we develop, the channel of divine energy. We become spiritual conductors, not just for ourselves, but radiating light and warmth for those around us. Remember, even those most powerful electrical grid is useless if we don't flip the switch. Similarly, its immense spiritual power is always available, but it's up to us to make the connection through prayer. So are you ready to crank this up in your spiritual wattage? And hopefully you'll be motivated and get something that you've heard that may help you expand and grow that wattage today. Now, to get in tuned with this prayer life, this connection, we often go to prayer as a transactional relationship. In other words, we're wanting something. We feel we're lacking something and we're asking for something. All of which is very good, by the way. I'm not discounting it as bad prayer. But it isn't a full story of a relationship. I want you to imagine what gets us at the center of prayer is self-acceptance. You see, for the longest time in my recovery life, I thought change was necessary. I wanted to become a better human being. I want to get rid of my defects of character. I wanted to become somebody else. And I'll tell you, I spent decades trying to improve my way of thinking, my way of feeling, decades. And it didn't occur to me that the number one lesson here in Alcoholics Anonymous might just be self-acceptance, so that I can become available and be able to be plugged into the spiritual entity, to be able to accept myself and to be able to allow something to occur has strengthened my spiritual life immensely. So it isn't about being somebody else or doing something else or wishing I didn't have this defective character and so on. No, it's about being present, about being available, about surrendering. See, we often talk about surrendering, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that during the talk, but surrendering isn't as easy as it sounds. It's not about giving up. It's really about allowing. So it's very dynamic. It isn't static, it's dynamic. It's ever moving. There's motion here. So I'm surrendering. What I'm doing is putting aside my ego, the things I think I want or need, where I become less important to the message that I might be receiving through this intuition. Self-acceptance is the foundation of recovery. You know, Dr. Silkworth, and I know you know this, quoted, and many of us have requoted it, that we, meaning alcoholics, were restless, irritable, and discontented. Now, we were irritable, restless, and discontented before we drank. And we reached out to get some sense of ease through alcohol to solve this idea of being restless, irritable, and discontent. So when we remove the alcohol, what remains is still our restless, irritable, and discontent. And I can tell you that self-acceptance wipes away a lot of that spiritual anxiety or upset, the self-absorption we have about our lives. Surrendering is about saying, you know what, I am available now. I'm available to what you can show me, to what you can teach me, to how you can direct me, to your motivation. I was saying to somebody a couple of days ago, I remember thinking this, vividly thinking this, that I didn't want to trust God too much because I was afraid that he may call me to a mountain with sandals and become a monk. And I didn't want that. So therefore, I was quite guarded in terms of how I went to God in prayer and meditation. Of course, I look back at that young man that thought that, I think how ridiculous. Because what if that were to be my faith or my truth, I would spend my whole life avoiding it, and my whole life would be not very good. See, it's about aligning ourselves to this power. And that's where true congruency comes in, this true purpose and meaning that each of us have in our lives. That's where it lies, that we are not mistakes. We are not our defects of character. We are made whole once again through the second step. We have purpose. We value things. We have dignity. See, all of these things were very much foreign to me in this idea of recovery. I thought I was bad. I thought I was weak, undisciplined, broken, smashed in. But of course, working through the 12 steps, I began to realize, no. I've had those moments, by the way. But who I am, the true self as a human being, is not broken. It may be hidden. I may not notice it. I may be preoccupied with other things. But the true self exists. And I call that the sacred identity in every human being. The sacred identity in which we have not earned or deserved has been gifted to us. And my mistake is I wasn't all that interested in finding out what that was. See, this is what presents us today. It's more than being sober today. It's about flourishing and thriving as a human being. And we do so by not becoming better or more skillful at things. We do so through self-acceptance and being tapped into this wattage, this spiritual bolting system that exists in the universe. So, in step 2, we talked about this idea that we have a belief system, or we come to believe, we came to believe, implies a journey. And often when I think about that step, I would often thought about, I just did it as a drive-by. I was born and raised in a faith, taught at school. I had a certain level of understanding about the magisterium of my church, the rituals, what I was supposed to believe. So when I looked at that step, I thought, well, it really doesn't apply to me because I believe in God. And again, there's so much richness in this that if I am open to a belief that I can be restored to wholeness, that I'm no longer, in fact, insane or broken, that I am made whole once again. I've been restored. I want you to imagine for yourself what that experience is like. That you're no longer self-defining yourself or have a self-image of someone who is not good enough. See, these are clues. These are symptoms that we have when we don't believe that we were made whole. That our brain or our mind goes to places that continually gives us evidence of how bad we are or what we lack. But as we grow in this program, as we start to develop this connection, and as we grow this connection, when we're able to be in this connection, fully aware, fully present, we begin to see who we really are. And it's not the false self of which we created, nor of which we may desire. It is the reason why we were born. So this is what's available. So this idea that is surrendering, I want you to imagine with me, just take a moment here, it's 30, 45 seconds. That, I want you to imagine surrendering to this power, this cause of the universe. And for those who've heard me speak before, I often talk about this cause as like the wind. That's my metaphor. It's the wind. It is moving me in a direction in which the wind is moving. Now, I can resist it and say no to it. And when I do that, my life is harder. However, I can align myself so that the wind is at my back, moving me in a positive direction, fulfilling the values in which I've inherited, and exhibiting those values to the world, manifesting them. See, this is when I feel completely whole and complete as a human being. Imagine, picture yourself surrendering to such a power. What would life be like for you? How would you feel? What would you be saying? What would other people be saying to you when you had this gift of belief that you are being taken care of? That your life no longer is yours, in a sense that you have to operate it on your own, that you have partnerships. And the partnership happens to be the cause of the universe. Imagine yourself placing yourself at the foot of this spiritual being, however you call God, and just handing it over to him or to her as a way of a surrendering sacrifice to say, look, you know better than I. Direct and guide me. And I will trust the signals I'm getting are the signals that you want me to perform. See, you can just see and hear the freedom around that, can't you? That you're no longer concerned about life's concerns. That you're okay, all is well. And yes, you're going to make mistakes, like I make mistakes. And yes, I'm going to exhibit defects of character, shortcomings. Yes, I'm going to be doing all that. But I have a perfect remedy for it. And it's in the step 10. So I just want you to continue to stay with me on this idea of imagining what your life would be like as you're surrendering yourself to this God, to this higher power. See, belief is not about intellectually accepting a set of propositions. It is about opening our hearts to the reality of the God's presence within us. See, we open up our hearts to God's presence that's within us. It is not God that's out there in some sort of heaven looking down on us as a tyrant. No. This divinity that exists in us. And to tap into that power is really to find the wholeness in which we've been searching for. Now, if you think about why you first started drinking, it was really about finding that Shangri-La. It was really about learning about that, how you can achieve that feeling. It was really about chasing happiness, joy, and peace through an artificial and external means of alcohol, which of course doesn't work. But the intention to move in that direction is a human condition. See, with our 12 steps, we move naturally into that connection. This is what we yearn for all the time, for our whole lives, is this peace and joy that can exist in us. Not that we're always happy all the time, nor all things work our way, because it doesn't. Life can be hard. We have storms in our lives. But when those storms or challenges confront us, we have an advocate. We have a belief that says, you know what, this is temporary. And why I'm going through this, I really don't know, but I have the faith that I am going to go through it. And I'm going to come out the other side. And perhaps I'm going to be stronger in character as a result of something that's challenging me, which is very different than the way I used to think was, why me? Why does this always happen to me? So, belief is not about intellectually accepting a set of propositions. It is about opening our hearts to the reality of God's presence within us. Get connected. Get internal. Allow this mystery to unfold. It'll happen. So, another metaphor I'd like to share with you. Imagine your higher power is the cosmic Wi-Fi network. It is always broadcasting, always available. But we often forget to connect. Sometimes we're too busy. Sometimes we don't think we need it. And sometimes we just can't find the right password. But here's the thing. This network doesn't require a password. It's open access, always strong, never drops, has unlimited data. All we need to do is to stop, be still, and click connect. And the best part, the more we connect, the clearer, the stronger the signal becomes in our lives. So, what prevents us from getting connection? What are the obstacles? Well, the biggest obstacle we have in our lives is control. We're trying to control and manage things where we have no power to do so. And of course, this obstruction prevents us from this true connection. So I want you to consider the risk of surrendering and giving up this perceived control that we have. Because you really haven't got control. You only perceive you want control. Doesn't necessarily mean you have it. And the only thing that you can control is your reaction to the stimulus and impressions that are out in the world. How you react to your thoughts. How do you respond to your feelings? How do you respond to your circumstances? That's the only thing we can control. Everything else is out of our control. So surrendering to God is not a surrender to a tyrant, but to a loving Father who knows what is best for us. It's not about giving up our will, but aligning it with a greater purpose. See, that's the action of surrender, as aligning our life with a greater purpose. And the greater purpose, the greater satisfaction. So we come in this decision of step 3 is to align ourselves to something more powerful than we could ever imagine. A loving entity. Now, how do I know it's a loving entity? Because I feel love. Love exists in my life, and I got that from somewhere. How do I know there's gentleness and kindness and ways in which I act? Because I've been given those things as gifts, as grace, if you like. I didn't earn them. I didn't deserve them. I didn't put effort in. I've allowed them to come up. You see, through self-acceptance, what starts to manifest is this sacred identity that each of us have. It's available for us. All the things that we're striving for in this world, the material things, the powerful things that we think are important, will fade away. But what will remain is the love that we have, the love that we can give, the service in which we can provide, the connection to other human beings. And here in AA, we have a wonderful opportunity to hold out their hand and say, well, come and see. Just come and see how your life can be different. So surrender is aligning ourselves with a greater purpose. Surrender is freedom. One of my spiritual mentors is Thomas Merton. And he often emphasized that true surrender to God paradoxically leads to genuine freedom. It's not about losing oneself, but it's finding one's true self. Letting go of our false self, he taught that the surrender involves letting go of our ego-driven false self to discover our authentic self in God. And what I can learn is to trust in the divine wisdom. So Thomas Merton went on to explain that surrender requires trust in God's wisdom over our own limited understanding. You want a powerful connection? Trust that it's existing. So surrender isn't passive, but it's active. It's an ongoing choice to align ourselves to God's will, as it states in step 3. We continually align ourselves with God's will. You'll often hear around the rooms, I've given my life and my will over to the care of God, and I take it back. And that's the end of the statement. And it shouldn't be the last of the sequence. What should be the last of the sequence is, and I give it back. We have to continually do this because the ego is relentless. We need to be persistent in returning to this idea that there is a cause greater than ourselves that will provide us the motivation, the energy, if you like, the enthusiasm of having a good life. Surrender is transformational. What I'm trying to get across here, friends, is this idea that the more I allow in the spiritual realm, the only reason there's space to allow, by the way, because I surrendered all my preoccupation, my self-absorption, and created a space for me to allow God to heal me in ways in which I can't even imagine. So true peace comes from surrendering. Surrendering our need to control. So what is one practice that I can give you? And one of the practices I want to share with you is from one of my spiritual giants, and the Saint Ignatius. And he had a way of praying. Middle Ages saint who founded the Jesuit order had the spiritual exercises. And one of the forms in which he talked about prayer was visualization. The constructive imagination of an inner sense of every human being. So imagine yourself that you have all the things internally that you could ever wish for, the courage, the strength, the love, the kindness, all the things that you may want to have is already present. Use your imagination, see yourself using those tools that you already have. And what would you be saying and feeling? How would you be moving? How would you be walking? What would other people say to you? Imagine yourself in a park, in sunshine, sitting on a bench and allowing these tools just to come forth and flood who you are. See, this is a very powerful form of prayer because we get the sense of who we can become as a result of utilizing these gifts which we already have. Visualization. If you haven't tried it, try it. So, now when we think about self-reflection, we often identify our faults or shortcomings. And there's more to the step than just that, by the way. It's about engaging in your assets and your strengths. So if you're doing your step 10, you're doing it nightly and you're evaluating your performance, if you like, your behaviors, make sure you put in your strengths to balance out that picture. So we're becoming interested in how we're operating. We're becoming responsible for the ways in which we act, feel, and think. But here's a surprising twist that I've discovered that one day, while doing my nightly inventory, I become a human lie detector. Not for others, mind you, but for myself. Suddenly, I could catch myself in those little white lies I've been telling myself for years. You know, like, I'll do it tomorrow, or just one won't hurt. Yes, I was like I developed a superpower. But instead of seeing through the walls, I was seeing through my own excuses. And let me tell you, it's harder to fool yourself when you practice this internal truth on your running 24/7. See, the practice now is that we become very much open to who we are without judging ourselves and condemning ourselves. We become transparent. We become vulnerable. We begin to see our experiences are our experiences, and they need to be shared. They need to be understood, all without judgment, so that we can learn. And as we're in this experience, what we're doing is building this conduit, this wattage that we talked about earlier. It becomes more and more powerful because there is a goodness that shrouds us as this act of step 10 actually takes place. So, what's the core message today? Core message is letting go and trusting God. Now, I know you've heard that, and you've heard it over and over and over again. You've probably been saying it. You've probably given some sort of shared experience to somebody saying that, well, let go and trust God. But I want you to get out of the head and into your experience and really start an action of letting go of your false self and your true self and surrendering and become available to this high voltage power that exists in the universe. Let go. Let go of the ego and trusting in God. So this happens over a process. It's not something that you have. It's not something that you get to keep once you've gotten there. It is a process, a daily process at work. As we continue to develop and become the person that we were always meant to be, We do so through this idea that there's a cause that's helping us get there. And as we continue to practice this prayer life, this meditation, that we begin to expand and strengthen ourselves, not through our own effort, not through our own ego desires, but through surrendering, letting go, and trusting God. Friends, if your life isn't what you hope it to be, and that maybe you're still isolated, maybe you're still upset and concerned and worried, perhaps you feel very little about yourself and you're not good enough. Perhaps you have a litany of things that you want to have happen. If you find yourself in this spot, I've got some great news for you. And the great news is simply this: you don't have to stay there. Winston Churchill said, if you find yourself in hell, keep walking. So when we find ourselves in emotional and mental hell, we keep moving in a spiritual direction. We keep aligning our will over, our life and our will over to God's will. We keep believing that we're being restored to sanity, that we've handed over all our defects of character for God to fix or heal or whatever is there for us, and that we have accepted ourselves of who we are and who we're not. This is an practical and extremely important way to live. It's powerful. And we get to practice this every day, every minute, in that cosmic Wi-Fi that never shuts down, that doesn't require a password, that it never drops. We can tap into that. So friends, this week is really about identifying ways in which we can expand and bond and strengthen our spiritual connection. And my hope is that I have left you with something for you to ponder, something for you to look at, something for you to try out, that will have you get more in line with who you are, who your true self actually is. So blessings from Canada, and thank you for your generous listening.